Democratic Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg had his most explosive appearance on the Fox propaganda network yet when he debunked the MAGA talking points of Fox News host Lawrence Jones in a heated back and forth that you absolutely must see. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, I have one long clip to show you. It's about a 9-minute exchange between Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg, who is one of the finest debaters and rhetoricians in the Democratic Party, and Lawrence Jones, who isn't just a Fox News host, but he's a member of Fox and Friends, which is one of the most propaganda-esque elements of Fox News, one of the most openly devout MAGA contingents, and Buttigieg was on fire, predictably, but this was his most heated appearance I've ever seen, and I love that he's bringing the energy. So we're going to play these clips and unpack them together.
It's live here in Chicago in his personal capacity. Here is Walt's campaign surrogate, Pete Buttigieg. Sir, thank you so much for giving us some time this morning.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
It was a big showing for the president yesterday. They put him at 11 o'clock, though, last night. And a lot of people were saying, we love you, Joe. We love you, Joe. But he's no longer the nominee. A lot of questions, though, about it, because the New York Times writes that all the cabinet meetings that the president has been having have been scripted. They said 9 months since the latest cabinet meeting. Axios writes that he's only available for work between the hours of 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And then the Wall Street Journal says when it came down to the debt ceiling negotiations back in 23, Nancy Pelosi had to take over it. Is this the reason why he's no longer the nominee for your party?
It's funny. Sometimes I feel like conservative media and the Republican Party still think they're running against Joe Biden. Mm-hmm. He had an opportunity last night to demonstrate his achievements, right? The fact that he is responsible, for example, for the biggest run of job growth in the history of the American presidency. I think in any job, but especially the presidency, you want to be judged by your results. People want to nitpick the show flow of a cabinet meeting when we have had a country that, when he inherited it, was in a condition where you couldn't even approach the Capitol because of the violent assaults on the Capitol by Trump supporters. Not just getting our country moving on from that, not just getting our country back on its feet from the COVID collapse, but all of the other things that he did, including, by the way, delivering the infrastructure bill that Donald Trump promised and failed to deliver.
I know you got the talking
points. You want to go off how many hours he's in which office at what time?
But these weren't conservative outlets. I guess you can say the Wall Street Journal is. But but you're a conservative outlet. And the first thing you're asking about is what time is at a cabinet meeting instead of achievement. I just want to know, when did you guys know that the president was unfit to be on your ticket?
So funny. Obviously, you can see right there, because even Lawrence Jones gets offended and says, yo, you have the talking points. Well, no, these are facts for which you have no refutation. You have no answer. The fact of the matter is, and I love the fact that Secretary Buttigieg used an apples-to-apples comparison. He's like, listen, among all the many other accomplishments, there are multiple ones where Donald Trump attempted to do these things and failed, and Joe Biden got it done, thus objectively proving Biden's superiority. If you and I have the same goal, and you get it done and I don't, you're probably better in that role than me. Certainly there's more evidence that you're better in that role than me than I have for the opposite, right? And that's what Lawrence Jones, a MAGA cultist, doesn't want to contend with. He doesn't want to deal with the fact that Trump promised to get infrastructure done. He failed. Biden got it done in 1 year. Biden's better than Trump. Doesn't want to deal with that. So instead, he's, quibbling over the secretary's characterization of whether the Wall Street Journal is a conservative outlet. I love it because, again, they are simply weak on the facts. More from this exchange.
Is not unfit.
So why is he not the nominee right now?
Because he did something that Donald Trump cannot comprehend, which is to put his ego aside.
I just want to get my question out. Why do you guys wait to the last minute to switcheroo after everyone saw? Can I just finish my question? And I'll let you answer, Mr. Secretary. But you guys waited until after the debate where everybody in America saw what happened that day. And all of these reports are coming out that you guys knew behind the scenes, that cabinet members were frustrated, that he couldn't do the negotiations with Nancy Pelosi and that she had to take it over.
What negotiations with Nancy Pelosi?
The debt ceiling in 2003, when it came down to the debt ceiling negotiations, that she had to take it over because he didn't know the talking points.
He won the debt ceiling negotiations. That's the point. You can go over.
Exactly. So you remember that was after the Republican Party had secured the majority in the House of Representatives. So Nancy Pelosi wasn't even Speaker of the House. Kevin McCarthy was the Speaker of the House, and they engaged in debt ceiling negotiations with President Biden, and they lost. President Biden gave very little compared to what the Republicans gave. The Republicans walked away with practically nothing. As a matter of fact, it was widely reported that even though Kevin McCarthy was talking smack in public, he privately confided to aides, who then leaked it to Politico, that Biden was a really sharp and able negotiator. As a matter of fact, Matt Gaetz, who hates President Biden and is a devout MAGA Republican, this was one of the predicates for why he triggered the motion to vacate, to kick Kevin McCarthy out of his job, because he said, and I quote, it's one of the best quotes that Matt Gaetz ever had. He said, "It's going to be very difficult for my Republican colleagues to present President Biden as this feeble, senile man when he continuously takes Speaker McCarthy's lunch money." So Kevin McCarthy, is a relatively young politician. He's well liked, or was well liked among his caucus, and he was the speaker, the leader of the Republican Party. And even Republicans admitted publicly and privately that Biden got the better of McCarthy. So the evidence is again against Fox News here.
Over whether he slips up and says one name when he wants to say another name, or you can look at what he's actually accomplished as president. It turns out he's really good at being president of the United States.
So let's talk about the record of the Biden-Harris administration. When you look at inflation, it's up 19.4%. When you look at the southern border, it's 8.1 encounters. When you look at crime, violent crime across 66 major cities, it's up almost 10% at 9.6%. Is that a record that you can run on?
Well, certainly the Biden-Harris record of bringing crime down compared to why crime went up under Donald Trump. And I often wonder, whether viewers of this network are aware that violent crime went up under Donald Trump. I think that deserves more coverage so we can ask ourselves why. And some of that has to do with policy, but some of that has to do with the message we send. When you have Donald Trump, an unrepentant, convicted criminal, running against a prosecutor like Kamala Harris, we have an opportunity to send a message about whether we're serious on law and order in this country, or whether it's a talking point, whether it's just something people try to use as a political theme for partisan gain. You want to talk about inflation? Inflation went up in every country after COVID, but we brought inflation down in this country. Of course, the most important question, every election is about the future, right? And in the future, economists predict that the Trump plan will increase costs for American families by $3,900. So why would we go back to somebody's going to make it worse?
I don't want you to think that.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Again, he's bringing the fire here. So you'll note the cherry picked stats. So they use the overall rate of inflation, the overall inflation being the Biden administration. Buttigieg is right. Inflation is a global phenomenon. It went up after COVID in every advanced democratic republic on earth, including the United Kingdom, which was controlled by the Conservative Party for the past 16 years. It's not a partisan issue, inflation. It's a global issue which has plagued both parties. Number one. Number two, notice how they cherry pick. Okay, they know violent crime has dropped and continued to drop. It's lower than it was under the Trump administration. So they have to pick 66 cities. You see what I'm saying? They cherry pick. They're like, damn, if we use the overall macroeconomic metric that we typically use, it's actually cutting against us. So we have to cherry pick this one specific instance. It's so dishonest from the Fox Propaganda Network because they know, just objectively speaking, the Trump administration's record is inferior in basically all ways to the Biden-Harris administration. And I love that Secretary Buttigieg is not letting them up on that.
The crime issue or inflation issue is something new because I've been covering it for years. I go out there and talk with voters every single day.
So you did cover the increase of crime under Trump.
Yesterday, I had the opportunity to talk with a mother. She's not a Republican. She's someone that would vote for a Democrat most of the time. Many of the people that are complaining are actually Democrats. This is what she said yesterday when I asked her about her son. Watch.
How can I vote for somebody who I don't feel like has my back? Or any parent who lost their child's back? You want me to vote for you? What are you going to do for me? You say what you're going to do, but when you get in office, do you really do what you said you're going to do? I don't think so. Because this crime has been going on for decades, and it's getting sickening to watch parents on TV crying about the loss of their child.
So with respect to you, Mr. Secretary, the people that are being killed in places all over the country, they look like me, they don't look like you. And they're upset with the Democratic Party not taking it seriously. You guys sent the cavalry in.
Not taking it seriously.
Hold on, let me finish. You guys sent the cavalry. You guys sent the cavalry in for you guys for your protection. But the people of Chicago don't see that on a day-to-day basis. What are you guys going to do to stop the bloodshed in our community?
Well, first of all, I was mayor of a city that faced that kind of pain. The toughest part of the job was dealing with gun violence, and the most heartbreaking part of the job was comforting or trying to comfort mothers who just wanted their child back. And the big question, I think, for politics, for policy, for media, is who is going to help them versus who is going to use them. The questions she's asking are the exact question any citizen should be asking, which is when you take office.
What do you mean?
Are you going to
Are you
keep your
saying that
promises?
mother is being used?
I'm saying that mother is asking the exact right question. And the question is, what are you going to actually do when you come into office? Now, we're getting a lot of people speaking up about...
Just tell me what you guys are...
I'll tell you exactly
what you've
what we're going to
done to stop the bloodshed.
Actually confront gun violence. 90% of Americans, more than 80% of Republicans, think we ought to at least be doing universal background checks. But Donald Trump says no. The Republican Party says no. You talk about assault weapons, something that made a difference when that assault weapons ban contributed to the reduction in crime. I remember coming to Chicago as a kid. And by the way, even though some media only want to talk about the worst and most painful things that go on in our city, Chicago is a proud city. Chicago is an extraordinary city. But I do remember coming here when crime and murder was off the charts, and the work that went on to bring it down from those levels that we saw in the past, the work that's going on to save lives right now is something that deserves the backing.
There was over 20 people shot last week, 5 people shot over the weekend.
Then why would we elect leaders who won't do anything about gun violence?
Well, it's the Democrats that run the city. Name the Republican that is in charge.
All right, but this is really important, right?
No, tell me.
I will tell
one
you.
Republican in charge of Chicago.
Well, hold on.
Name them.
Listen to me, because not only did we have those levels of crime under Democratic and Republican leaders, right? But people try to cherry pick this for partisan purposes. You want to play that game?
It's not partisan.
We can talk about
As
how.
I told you, Mr. Mayor, they look like me, not you.
Yeah, and so is the case in Boston, where there was a much lower murder rate, and also a Democratic mayor. We could talk about how the murder rate in Mississippi is double what it is in Illinois. Now, I could go around saying that the murder rate in Mississippi is double what it is in Illinois because Mississippi has a Republican governor and Illinois has a Democratic governor. But you and I both know it just doesn't work that way.
I got you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Love it. Absolutely love it. So he's so good at this. He just has a better command of the facts than any MAGA Republican. He's like, listen, if you want to play these naked partisan games, this idea that of Democrats that gun violence is so high in Chicago, fine, you're free to make that claim, but I can do that with you with red states versus blue states. So by your logic, does that mean that Republicans are responsible morally and politically for the violence that happens in their states? And that means we can blame them, and we should be able to blame them from Democratic platforms on Democratic media. Would you accept that? If MSNBC host Lawrence O'Donnell says, you know, the crime rate in these red states, pound for pound per capita, are just higher than in blue states, and it's because of Republican governors, would you take that on the chin? Would you accept that, Lawrence Jones? Would you be like, yep, Republicans do deserve the blame. Perhaps we should have a Democratic governor of Mississippi? No, of course not. They would never admit to that because it's a double standard. And unfortunately for Lawrence Jones and other MAGA hosts on Fox, they're simply outmatched rhetorically and in terms of the facts by the likes of Pete Buttigieg. Masterclass performance. Glad that he went on there. And maybe eventually they'll think twice about bringing Buttigieg on. But actually, I hope not, because it makes for excellent content. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.